Good morning. I'm going to be looking at my little cheat sheet here. But what I thought I'd do is kind of walk you through my life and talk about the different stages of my life and how book learning, I think, saved me and really helped me. I was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1960 and grew up in Wichita, Kansas, this little city in the middle of nowhere. And when I was 8 years old, I was in school, and I noticed all my friends would go out for lunch, and they would buy bubble gum. And they would always come back late, and they would get in trouble. And in those days, the teachers actually had these little wooden paddles, and if you came late, they'd hit you with them. So being late was a big deal. So what I thought is I had asked my father if I could borrow $2 so that I could go and buy gum. So he gave me $2, so I went to the candy store after school, and I bought a bunch of bubble gum. They used to have these things called Bub Daddies, these long sticks of bubble gum. So I'd take it to school, and during lunch, I would sell all this gum. And so I really liked kind of the feeling of being in control of my own destiny. This was 1969, I was 8 years old, and, I'm making $10 a day, and, and that's like $100 a day today. And I felt really good. And then in 1973, my family moved from Kansas to Chicago. And my father was a salesman in IBM, and I was in junior high, and so I looked around, and, I didn't know anybody. It was a very strange world for me. This is the first time I ever lived outside a black neighborhood. So we moved to Lombard, Illinois, and this was in 1973. I had a bomb thrown in my house, a "nigger go home" written on our lawn. I went into school, and it was very traumatic for me. But I figured, I'll try this commerce thing here. So I started to sell gum in school, and then people started to like me. In fact, they liked me so much that they stopped buying ice cream from the school because they were buying all my bubble gum. So the principal came up to me and said, you need to stop selling gum. And I said, why? I said, I don't think there's a rule against it. He said, well, you need to wear a hairnet because you're selling food. And I said, no, that's not true because it's packaged food. So anyway, he finally cut a deal with me so I could sell my gum, and I ended up selling his ice cream. So it kind of worked out, and that actually helped me get to know people. And one is, helped me get money, and number two, I got to know people. So then I got out of school in 1978. I wanted to get out in 1977 because I hated school so much. One of the speakers said how much he hated school. That was me. So I wanted to graduate when I was 16. My mother wouldn't let me. So the day after I was 17, I graduated, and I went to school. And went to UIC, studied math, and then got out of there and went to IBM. Pardon me. Now, IBM back in this would have been the early 80s, very early 80s, had this no nepotism rule. And my father was a manager at IBM, so I found out, everybody in my family, despite this no nepotism rule, has worked at IBM. Because my father would call his friends and say, hey, I'll hire your kids if you hire mine. So it was 1981, 1981 or 82, I can't remember now. So I was 20 or 21 years old, working at IBM, and they'd give you this lesson. You go to training, the first thing they tell you is, if you're not a salesman, you're a nobody here. They didn't quite say it like that, but they said the chairman is a salesman, the vice chairman's a salesman, the president's a salesman, and anybody who's going anywhere is a salesman in this company, So I was this very introverted kid who I was good at numbers, but I hated to speak. In fact, one of the managers called my father and said, your kid is really bright, but we can't get that kid to talk. So they figured they were going to stick me into something very technical. So I ended up working with the number one copier salesperson in the country. It was really my job to make sure that we didn't lose any installs. So I ended up writing this program that would give the salespeople a signal on when the right time to sell the machine was. So I did that and did well. It won an award, but I just remembered that feeling, and so I left IBM in early 1983 to start my own company, because they had actually assigned me, I think I was the first person in Chicago to be in charge of the personal computer. They didn't think, I think until like 2005, that thing was really going anywhere. So I ended up getting lucky and getting some skills. Started my company. I was 22 or 23. Did well enough to kind of take care of myself. But like a lot of people that age, I thought I knew more than I actually did. So I ended up doing okay. And then I took this little passion I had, which I was really into cars. And I had a plan to, by 22, I was going to buy a Porsche. So I saved all my money and ended up buying a Porsche when I was 22 years old. And I say that was a lucky lesson for me in my life, because I just knew once I got this car, my life was going to change. All the girls were going to like me. I just envisioned myself going up to the Academy Awards, and I'd say I learned a good life lesson there. It was actually the most miserable time in my life. So I would say this period of my life, which was, I would say, called 8 to 28, was what I call the talent phase of my life. I was pretty good at numbers. I mean, everything in my brain is kind of numbers. I'm fairly good at numbers. That's why I studied math. In fact, I was in 1984, it was 1985, I decided that I wanted to be a trader, because I had moved to LA. And I ended up writing some programs for a commodity trading fund. So I was studying trading, and I was writing programs for this commodity trading fund, and I think this guy was the first Bernie Madoff. So he took all the good trades and stuck it in his account and spread out all the bad trades. So I didn't think I would look good in an orange jumpsuit, so I decided I was going to come back to Chicago. And I told a friend of mine who I knew was a trader, I said, hey, listen, I will work for you for 6 months for free if you let me get on the floor. So for 6 months, I worked for free as an arbitrage clerk. So I'd get up early in the morning, I'd study trading, I'd go down to the Merc, and I'd work there till 2 o'clock, and then go to the library, and then come home until midnight when I forced myself to go to sleep. So this is what I'm saying, this period of my life from 8 to 28 was really just about me kind of leveraging my talents, but it was mostly about me working for and by myself. At 28, I remember I was 28, somehow I ran into this book called Think and Grow Rich. Somebody told me about it, and I read the book, and I would say it really opened my eyes. I would say that is one of the best things that ever happened to me, was reading that book. And I would say some of the big things that I got out of that book was to have a specific plan, a definite goal, and have this burning desire to succeed and have faith that you would do it if you did the right kind of things. And also to do more than you get paid for. And I think that is a lot of people don't do that. They really expect somebody else to take care of them. They tell other people their problems. And I think during this period I learned people don't care about your problems. They care about their problems. So you as a business person get paid to solve their problems. I've seen a lot of people who go and they go into business and they're thinking about themselves as opposed to thinking about other people. So I would say at 29 really started what I call my personal development phase. So I ended up having to develop myself. So reading this book was really helpful. And then, getting these skills in trading and other things, which I think really helped me. And then it was 1989, I actually funded a company. I gave $40,000 to a friend of mine's brother-in-law to start a company. This is the last time I've ever given family members kind of money. So I'd given them this money, and I recommended it to people, and he totally screwed up everything. So I had to stop being a trader, which I really liked, to go and help and clean up the mess this guy had done. And a thing that I learned there that my father told me, in life, the only thing you really have is your reputation. And in that case, so I stopped something that I really loved, that I was doing really good at, just so that I could protect my own reputation. At the end, I think it was a good lesson for me. That's also something I got out of the book. So I would say the other thing that I did was, in my own personal development, was to read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which I think is another great book. And I would say some key learnings that I really use today is, one is begin with the end in mind. I always try to do that today, is try to envision where this thing is going to end up and then work backwards from there. I do that in all our businesses now. And that has actually helped me quite a bit. To think win-win. To think about the other people first. Because I think in business, any deal that's not a win-win ends up being a lose-lose. I think that is an absolute truth that I learned out of the book. This is something where I would say I still am not world-class at, which is seek first to understand, then be to understood. Usually, if you're a salesperson, a lot of times you have the answer in your head, and when people are talking, you're really thinking about a response. You're not really listening to them. And whether you realize it or not, that comes through. So whenever you're a problem solver, you can be listening to people and not really listening. You're really just trying to figure out how you're going to convince them, as opposed to really trying to understand what they're looking for. That is something that periodically I have to remind myself of. And this last, I think I've got about 6 minutes left. I want to talk about now what I would call from age 34 to 49 is what I call the building the enterprise phase of my life. So in 1992, my father retired from IBM. We took this little company that I had, and I'd built a lot of financial modeling systems for Sears and Abbott Labs and Mellon Bank. I took, this talent that I had, which is numbers, and turned it into a business. And then I ended up hiring some people. When my father retired from IBM, we took this little company, started Blackwell Consulting together. And this is what I had to learn how to build an enterprise. I had to learn to work with a lot of different types of people and not just really just be billable myself and have a couple people that work for me, but think about how to really have an enterprise. So during this phase, I read a book called The Discipline of Market Leaders. And I think that is one of the great books in business. And what this says is you have to think about your business and your, what you call it, the value proposition or value discipline. And there's three. There's a operational excellence model, which is McDonald's, which is all about flipping a burger in 15 seconds or whatever it is. There's product innovation, which is Sony and Apple. And then there's a customer intimacy model, which I say is our model, which is you really go to a customer, try to figure out where his unique needs are and how that fits your capability. So you're focusing really on customers. IBM was really great at that. So I would say in our businesses, we are really a customer intimate. We have a customer intimacy model. The other book I would say that really helped me was Good to Great, which I think is another fabulous book. And this is a lesson I would learn, I'll tell you, in our two different companies. When I started EKI, Electronic Knowledge Interchange, in 1998, I was 37 years old, and I was fortunate enough to not have too much money. So I actually had to really pay attention. So I created a financial model. I knew what our niche was going to be. So the company grew really fast, and it did really well. In 2000, I was looking at, our business had never done any business in the public sector before. So in 2000, Chicago had this thing called the Ping Pong Festival. So I said, we're going to sponsor this. We took $100,000 and we became a sponsor. And whenever there was tables out, there was just lots of people, the lines of people to play. So I did some research on the sport. There's 300 million people around the world that play table tennis. Everybody knows what table tennis is and is experienced, but nobody can name the name of a brand. So I said I'm going to start a table tennis company. So in 2002, I started Killer Spin. turned out it was a 30-year anniversary of ping pong diplomacy. So I'm thinking, we'll do this. We can leverage our business in China. We'll become the brand of the U.S. We're going to start with content. To make a long story short, it's been successful, but in that I started with the what as opposed to the who. With EKI, I started with the who before the what, and actually Killer Spin would have been much farther ahead if I would have hired the right people sooner than I did. That's a big lesson. Now I would say as I turn 50 this year, I'm going to say now I'm into the reinventing and leading leaders phase. Right now when you're building and when you're an entrepreneur, a lot of times you take on everything yourself. And then as your business starts to grow, things start to drop off. You hire people to run certain things. And I would say what the previous speaker said about hiring people, I am the world's worst hirer and I'm the world's worst manager. So I have to hire people who tell me what to do as opposed to vice versa. There's now another good book that I've read is called Blue Ocean Strategy, which really tells you to really think differently about your business and not just get into this downward spiral of competition in an already saturated market. Lastly, in my last minute, I tell you, I've got this iPad here and an iPod Touch. I've got 150 books and about 500 podcasts. I spend about an hour every day trying to educate myself, trying to really, and when you're reading books, what you're really trying to do is learn from other people's mistakes. And I tend to read broadly. I read economics and history and business and marketing and all kinds of things. And what I'm really trying to do is to learn from other people's mistakes and learn where other people have been successful. I think Jack Welch's Winning is a great book. So I think as an entrepreneur, I think it's the best thing you can be in. Because like the previous speaker said, it really gives you an opportunity to, one, control your own destiny, and two, create value for other people. We've taken people who were ex-felons and they've gone and now they've got great lives. People who made $10 an hour 6 years ago now make $100,000. So now as I'm getting older, I want to focus on leaving a legacy. So I got 30 seconds, so listen, thank you very much.